Matt, Scott, Reuben, Elliot. Long ago, the four podcasters lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when the Australian nation attacked. Only the Doofcast, master of all four podcasters, could stop them. But when the world needed it most, it vanished. 100 years passed and we discovered the new Doofcast. Although its podcasting skills are great, it has a lot to learn before it's ready to save anyone. But I believe the Doofcast can save the world.
Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and my favorite part about this children's show is the war profiteering.
And my name is Matt Freeman, and my favorite part of this show for children is the remarkably effective propaganda apparatus.
This week on the show, we are once again heading back to the land of elemental bending to discuss Season 2 of The Legend of Korra. And of course, we couldn't make this journey without our two favorite kangaroo benders. Welcome back to the show, Elliot and Reuben. How's it going, guys?
G'day.
We're back. But you can't call us kangaroo benders. That's pretty offensive in Australia.
It is? I'm so sorry.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it could be, to be honest.
I'm going to be honest with you. I sat down to type this in the notes and I was like, all right, what's something Australian that they can bend? And I wrote that down. I didn't stop to think what that would look like or mean or any of that.
But anyway, it's good to be back to talk about Legend of Korra, Season 2, which is the best season of any Avatar show, of course.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
No, that's not an opinion I actually hold, but I thought I'd come out of the gate swinging.
Yeah, so we're gonna be talking all about the season. It will be a full spoilers discussion for Season 2 of Legend of Korra, and I think that's all we're gonna do this week. It's probably gonna be a pretty lengthy discussion, so I think that's enough to fill an entire episode talking about a whole season of the show. So let's just jump right into it and get into Korra Season 2. I think the first thing we need to say here, folks, is that every other episode that we've covered Avatar on has been one of our patron-produced episodes where one of our patrons really, really wanted us to watch and talk about this thing, and so they supported us on Patreon and asked us to do so. It was for all 3 seasons of Avatar, and for... Wait, how many? There were 3 seasons of Avatar, right? Yes, right. For all 3 seasons of Avatar and for the first season of Legend of Korra, which we did almost a year ago now. And then since then, strangely, oddly, nobody has asked us to talk about Korra since then.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I guess when Reuben and I said we were going to be on the Doofcast more, I was like, hey, let's just do Korra Season 2 on our own, and then maybe someone will come back for Season 3. Let's get this one out of the way by ourselves.
Yeah, so I think I knew coming into the season that this was probably considered universally the worst season of the show. I did not know why or how or any of that stuff. And we're going to get to my impressions in a bit. But Matt, I wanted to start with you. What were your overall impressions of Season 2 of The Legend of Korra?
It's funny because it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, I guess. I thought that I guess we'll go into details later, but the deep past arc, the Wan arc or whatever we want to call it, I thought that was fine. Thought it was good. It was simple, straightforward. It was all right. There was a lot of stupid stuff in this season, but there was also a lot of stuff that I thought I was like, this is okay. I don't see. I didn't love the first season much personally. So to me, I'm just like, this might be sacrilegious. Maybe I enjoyed this season more than the first season because of the Wan stuff. Because I thought that was like cute and fun and original. So that's my impression.
Okay. Well, Elliot, we'll deal with the controversial opinion here in a bit.
Yeah, you'll get your crack at me.
Yeah, but before we do that, let's go over to you, Elliot. What did you think?
We need to do a doof-over of Season 1 of Korra. Yeah, I enjoyed this season more than I remembered. Like, I haven't watched any of Korra since it came out, so I had definitely built this up in my head over the past 6 or 7 years or whatever it is. to be worse than it actually ended up being. I don't think it's the best, but I was actually pleasantly surprised because I'd set my expectations so low that I actually was like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought.
Okay, cool.
High praise all around.
Yeah, it's real high
I had a
praise.
very similar reaction to you, Elliot, which is that it had been, as someone who exists in the Avatar fandom, this is the one that everyone points to as, oh, it's trash, like, why even bother? And so I had this very low opinion of it. But reflecting on it, I think actually, of all the things that they do in this season, I think a lot of them are really good ideas that just kind of fall flat a little bit in their execution. There's actually a lot of really cool stuff. They do a lot of really cool and interesting things that when you think about the one-sentence summary of some of the plot points in the season, you're like, oh, that's actually cool. Like, I'd be down for that. And it just doesn't quite line up correctly,
Yeah, I would describe this season as a bunch of ingredients that needed more time in the oven. Like, it felt like there were so many cool things that had seeds planted, and then for whatever reason, they just didn't come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm shockingly, I think, going to be the most negative person here, which doesn't happen to me very often.
Classic Scott. Always so negative about the media that he watches. That's what we all know and love you for, Scott.
Yeah, I thought this was a bad season of TV. Okay, well, I thought it was an incredibly mediocre season of TV. It was just fine all the way through. And in a show and a series and a franchise that I've come to expect some of like the best writing I've seen in cartoons out of, that really disappointed me. But I don't think it disappointed me as much as season one. So I think season one is a better season of TV. I'm going to totally disagree with you on that one, Matt. I think season one, I saw a shape of what could have been brilliant that I think they just missed the mark on, that they just weren't willing to go where they needed to go to make it brilliant. And that was more disappointing to me than this season, which to me was just like for 12 episodes or however many episodes the show is.
So season one was just a bit more painful because it got so close and just missed it. Whereas this one did get your hopes up as much, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in preparation for the show, I went back and listened to our season one episode just to kind of refresh my memory about what we had all said. And I thought it was, I mean, not to toot our own horns, but I thought we had a great conversation about like the ways in which that season just didn't quite get there. And this one, I feel like I just feel like it was never close. I agree with you, Reuben, that there's a lot of really interesting ideas here, but like structurally, none of them come together and play off each other in good ways. Like it's a bunch of disconnected ideas that don't like mesh into an overall theme. Like you figure like book 2 Spirits, like this is going to be the season that really talks about and deals with Korra's spirituality and like that part and like it does, but in the most surface level way possible. Like it doesn't confront her any inner struggling of her as a character really at all. And it was so disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, like, because season one was actually a lot about her connecting with her spiritual side to unlock airbending. And then in this one, like, what's weird to me is the climax for Korra in this season is where she hops into the time tree and turns into a Kaiju Spirit. And like that, I can see a world where that is a really sort of fulfilling end to a season-long arc on, sort of finding yourself. Like, I think what really comes together in the last few episodes is her learning she's more than just the Avatar. Like, Korra is as important as the Avatar. And if that was something that had been a bit more consistent and felt throughout the whole season, I feel like that would have been a really satisfying conclusion to that arc. But instead, it's just kind of in the last episode, I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everything is just a bit slow and stretched out over way too many episodes, and it's like they had all the they had all the ingredients there. They had all of the ideas, but then they were like trying to keep the plate spinning for far too long, and nothing with nothing happening. Like the one thing that stands out to me is like anything involving siblings is always my Achilles heel. I will always be completely broken by anything that has like anything with drama involving siblings, full stop. so I was like, oh, I see. We're doing a thing with Tenzin and his siblings and their, the baggage they have left over from childhood and their hard feelings about each other, even though they love each other deep down. This is gonna be good. This is my shit. And like, kind of, it was like fine. Ultimately, I didn't really, I didn't really ever have that moment I was expecting, where there was like a culmination and a catharsis, and I felt like there had been some emotional breakthrough storytelling wise between these characters. You could see what they were heading for, and you could kind of see the moment where it was supposed to come together, but it didn't land for me. And stuff with siblings always lands for me. So I was like, I think they just took too long to get there, and I was already bored with it by the time we did.
Yeah.
I did like the Tenzin in the spirit world stuff a lot. I like him in the fog of lost souls. Like, I thought that was really cool, but I agree, if I felt like it felt like a conclusion to a much more explored and better realized inter-sibling conflict than what was actually in the show.
Yeah, I actually thought, I thought You Are Tenzin was a great moment, but that's about Tenzin. That's not really about him and his siblings.
Yeah.
The conflict between, I mean, maybe the thing between him and his siblings isn't meant to be resolved yet, but I was like, my God, this has been dragging out for an entire season and we haven't resolved it. Like, come on,
I think for me, it's almost more like if I'm thinking about when the sibling stuff comes up, it's in like episode 4, episode 8, and then it comes to a head in that finale. And like that to me is the problem. Is you talked about spinning plates, and almost feel like maybe they bit off a bit more than they could chew. Because if I think about that really interesting plot line, it probably got less screen time than Marco and Bolin. And it's sort of like I would decrease their screen time and give it to this other plot line if I could. Like, I think maybe there was sort of too many plates being juggled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can we decrease Mako and Bolin's screen time by 100%?
Oh, come on. I do think, this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? Where if you have the one sentence summary of that plotline, it's the 3 children of effectively Jesus have to reconcile the fact that while their father was Jesus, he wasn't necessarily a great father, and that's left them a lot of baggage, right? Like, sure. That's an awesome plotline. And like, this person, this kind of oaf becomes a movie star and accidentally caught up in a propaganda war, right? Okay, that's great. That's awesome. This cop and his ex-girlfriend have to deal with somebody trying to, sneakily take over her company. Like, cool, that's awesome. Like, all of these things are really awesome in isolation, but too many plates spinning, too much going on, and they just get dragged out and not executed very well.
Well, and it doesn't tie into the overall movement of the season. Like, if there was Tenzin's thing with his siblings is for the first, half of the season is off in the side, and it's basically we cut to the B plot every episode to see what's going on at the Southern Air Temple, and then eventually it works its way into the season. But for the first half of it, we're just kind of like, okay, and I enjoyed it because I like those characters, but it just felt tertiary to everything that was going on. Like, there's a civil war happening. Korra is betraying her father to support her uncle. And you're like, holy shit. And then we cut over to Air Temple shenanigans. I'm like, okay. Like,
there's even a moment in, I don't know what episode it is, but when Korra reunites with the Air Temple crew, and they're like, wait, what? There's a civil war going on? And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess you didn't know that, did you?
Yeah. I think the biggest example I have of my problems with the structure of the season are, I agree with you, Matt, that the first Avatar stuff is actually super interesting. I like it. I don't know if I needed the lore, but I thought it was very interesting, and I thought this is an interesting place to take the character and to explore what the Avatar is and where it comes from. I felt like Korra getting to that part where she's passed out and has amnesia and needs to do this stuff, like, it would have been so much better if she had, the mistake she makes that gets her amnesia is she gets mad at her boyfriend because he sold her out to the president, and then she storms off, and then she gets jumped by a spirit, and I just think the whole first Avatar thing is her learning from mistakes. And I thought if the mistakes she made tied into the mistakes he made, maybe that would have worked for me better. And I just didn't feel like they did. I didn't feel like I feel like this is like she's going on a spiritual journey and reliving the past and seeing what happened to the first Avatar to try to like learn from what he did and the mistakes he made. And I didn't feel like that was set up properly from her perspective. I thought it was just, oh, so this is just happening now. I mean, maybe I missed something. If I did, please point it out. But that's how I felt.
There's like an indirect connection, I think, between the way one trusts Vatu and the way she trusted Unalaq.
Vatu is the evil one.
Yeah. The way one trusted Vatu and the way Korra trusts Unalaq, but it's that's like a 2 degrees of freedom sort of connection, right? Like it's
I mean, so shouldn't the thing that causes amnesia and the thing that gets her knocked out have been? Yes, exactly. Like instead, what the show does is she trusts Unalaq. Unalaq betrays her, quote unquote, because this was always her plan. Then she gets mad. Then she goes back to Republic City. Then she confronts everyone about this traitor, is denied and not listened to, and gets really angry and goes off on her own. And then everything happens. Like if the mistake of trusting him in the first place is what led to the amnesia, it's what led to this whole this 2-episode arc where we're seeing into the past. I think that would have been so much better.
Or even, when she's there and gets attacked by the spirits, it's Eska and Desna are there too. Like they're just kind of following her as this stuff happens to her, and then they're like, "All right, well, see you later." Like it would have been so easy to tie that in. Even
just quick side note: how cool is it that these people are just like traveling intercontinentally by waterbending?
It's pretty cool.
I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think. Yeah, like maybe if it had been when Korra was on her way to Republic City that this had happened, it might have fit in better. Right after she realizes Unalaq betrayed her, then she sees the visions of Wan go through the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like it's like no story structure is like you make it like your character makes a choice, and if it's the wrong choice, you punish them for that choice, and then you allow them to learn from their mistakes and hopefully change, right? And so like having the amnesia, having the getting wiped out and blown away and failing be the thing that directly leads to, okay, now she has to go on the spiritual journey. I think it would have just been so much smoother to me. And it felt like 2 different pieces. It felt like it happens episodes after she leaves. Like the Civil War episode happens, then she goes back to Republic City. Then there's like 2 episodes, and then we get into the other stuff. I think that's where I agree with Matt on the like everything seems a little bit stretched out complaint.
It's also just them like tell me if I'm missing something, but basically the idea, even if we are drawing that connection between Korra trusting Unalaq is akin to Wan trusting Vatu. In both cases, it's not like Vatu. You can use it in either sense, but it's not like Unalaq is like directly appealing to Korra's vanity. He's like he has made a pretty good argument that he knows how to develop her along the spiritual path, and she makes what seems like a rational choice. And Vatu is like, help me, I'm being persecuted by this creature, and he's like, oh, I'll help you. Like in both instances, the Avatar character acts from a place of what feels to me as the viewer like a relatively wholesome place, and then it turns out that was a terrible choice, and then they're punished for trusting this bad person. And I'm like, okay, so thematically, don't help people.
Well, I mean, just like, you take one look at Unalaq and the music that plays when he's on screen, and he's evil. So
same with Vatu. Don't help people look evil is the answer.
I see this as a problem.
I like that though. I hadn't quite put it in those terms, but I do agree with you that like Korra's arc through the show is so confused, and I think that's true for both seasons actually, where like I can see what they're trying to do, but I just don't think they quite get there. And then at the very end, they just say, okay, now accomplished. And yay, she did it. Like the same thing with the airbending, right? Where it was just like, oh, she's got this spiritual block and she can't do, no, she did it now. And this is like, she just kind of comes to real, like, I didn't feel that Korra learned something she needed to learn, became more spiritually centered. I do agree with you, Elliot, that like this idea that like Korra is important is great. And you know what would have made that land in this season better? If they hadn't given her the avatar powers back at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
I'm still mad about that.
I think this is all a bit of a symptom of just the way the show is being written a season at a time, as opposed to like the original was sort of roughly sketched out for the whole thing.
Sure.
Like they knew where they were taking the characters. And I think it's just that wasn't there this time. And that's sort of what's leading to what feels like, sort of jumps and starts for some of the character arcs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt like Mako was a whole different character in this season. Anybody agree with that?
I didn't think he was a character in the first season, so it's tough to know if he's a different one in this one.
But he was like the hot-headed jerk in that season, and now he's just a cop. His character is that he's a detective.
Sure. Yeah, he's like my least favorite character in this entire show, so I don't have anything good to say about him.
I do want to talk about Bolid quickly, just because like I think the propaganda arc, falls a bit flat for me in various bits and pieces. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't cackling every time one of the movers was playing. Like,
sure,
I think you could tell that the crew was having a lot of fun making fun of shitty old movies.
Yes.
And I don't know, I got a kick out of that. Like I was always enjoying the shitty effects of like whenever the animals would talk and it was so poorly dubbed and that sort of thing. Like it was always fun.
I didn't mind it, honestly. Everybody seems to want to rag on Bolin's plotline. I honestly thought it was sort of pleasant comic relief relative to the dreary plotting nature of the rest of the story.
I mean, I thought it was fine. Like, I think you guys are right. It's funny and it's fun, but it feels at odds with like everything else that's going on in the story. And I don't know. I think it's just weird that the show once again like chooses to do something pretty complicated with saying this is the propaganda arc, and then it doesn't like actually have anything to say about propaganda at all. It's just like, this is what we're doing. And like I really thought, I was like, oh, so we're gonna do like a really interesting thing where we're like examining wartime propaganda and what it can do. And no, not really. He just literally saves the president. Yay. I mean, I'm glad for him. I'm glad for like he became like his beginning of the season. He starts as this guy who just like can't find his place, and like we see him attempting to do the bending game, and his team is just really, really bad. And so he doesn't know where he belongs. Like everyone else has kind of found their purpose. As you said, Matt, Mako's a cop. Korra's the avatar, and he's trying to find where he belongs, and that is his arc, that he finds something he enjoys and something he's good at and something that gives him confidence, and that's good. But it's also propaganda.
I like the part when he kicks everybody's ass at the end of the season.
It's like the character of Varric as well is so interesting to me, because it's this very lovable, just because of like who the character is, kind of character, but he's also clearly either evil or at least complicit in evil stuff, right?
Yeah, are we supposed to hate him? I don't know.
Exactly, right? Like he's this character that is like is kind of close to and towing the line of saying something about, the military industrial complex and all of this stuff, right? But never really does, and also just kind of becomes a lovable character. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the problem with Varric is he was actually too much fun, and so they got caught because he's meant to be the bad guy, but then they're like, but he's
just too fun to write and have on screen.
Like, yeah, like they were clearly having so much fun with every one of his scenes. Like Julie do the thing is iconic.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think maybe they just didn't quite know how to make it land as him being, unilaterally
Yeah.
evil because
I mean, he's
too
doing
fun.
war profiteering, but also he built his own
Yeah.
cell because he knew he was going to get in trouble for it. That's delightful.
He's so lovable.
Yeah. Right. Like,
Yeah, but because you're right, the show plays it off as like, oh, like how cute, and well, no, actually, even the show seems confused because it's simultaneously like, and then also everyone confronts Varric about how terrible he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he completely
Yeah,
screws
like-
over Asami, right? Like he
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
manipulates and hires criminals to ensure that he can destroy her business and then
Yeah.
take it over in a hostile takeover. It's horrible.
yeah. There's one scene where you're just like, oh, it's going to reveal that he's just evil. Oh my God. And he's all like dark and like, you know, you're like, oh, he's dropping the facade. He's actually this conniving guy. And the lightheartedness has been a facade the whole time. And then like it snaps right back to that again. He's just
Right, yeah.
lighthearted and funny again. I mean, this reminds me a lot of when, like me and Michael would always like write things together. And this reminds me of like if someone had like walked into the middle of one of our writing sessions with us not having settled down on the story and not having really calcified like who each character is, and each of us having our own mental impression of what each of the characters in our story was and what the direction of the story was and what the theme and what the tone was, and been like, all right, 13 episodes, write us 13 episodes right now. This is what would have happened. And I think that is basically what happened, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm not super familiar with all the development stuff, but like, yeah, like I think season 2 did catch them a bit off guard, and like 3 and 4 are definitely better. So they must have found a rhythm or something at that point. I think they got renewed for like 4 seasons at the same time they got renewed for the second. But yeah, like I do think this one was developed quite quickly in the writing room, at least.
Yeah, I don't know why people make things like this. Like, can't you just be like, it's not ready yet? It will suck if we make it like this.
That's just like, you're always on deadline. Like that's life. Life is deadlines, and
But
you gotta do what you gotta do.
But I get it. But like, can't some decision maker be like, why are we going to make what is going to be regarded as the worst season of Avatar of all time when we could just not do that? Nobody
goes into it like expecting it to be bad. Like,
but can't. I mean, I feel like if you can read the scripts, can't you see it? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it does feel like this was not something the creative team had as much input in as they could have. But I did want to call out one thing I really like about this season is the way that the ending of it actually has like big changes.
Oh yeah,
go on. Because something I can't remember how much I managed to hold back from talking about this in our last episode, but like the biggest letdown for me in this season is the fact that the Equalists are just gone. Just, you know, it was a movement that had some really good points, and sure, the guy leading it was a monster who was a liar, but like it doesn't change the fact that they had a bunch of really good points. And so it always bothered me that they just completely disappear from season 2. So it's nice that season 2 at least is like Korra decides to keep the spirit portals open, and she also has like permanently lost her connection to the other avatars, so she's sort of on her own.
I was
now.
so happy that they did that. Like I really thought that was going to come back when everything else came back, and then to see that not happen and to see them stay firm with that made me really happy.
Yeah, it's almost like they listened to the criticism you had of season 1 6 years later, and they're like, oh, okay. Because it's a more middle ground consequence.
Yeah.
But like I am like, and I mean that's season 3 of Korra is probably my favorite individual season of Avatar. And part of it is this one thing that, or these couple of things that season 2 set it up with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of talked about this at the end of season 1, but I think one thing that does excite me about the future of the show is I just don't know what it's going to do now. They have changed the game in a fundamental way. The world has changed. They have kind of said that the status quo of the world, of the spirits in the spirit world and the humans in the real world, is not the way it's going to be anymore. And so things are going to change now. And it's really exciting thinking about like all the directions they can take that and all the different ways they can explore the changing world and what Korra's place will be in that world. What is the Avatar's purpose in a world in which spirit and human live amongst each other constantly? I don't know.
And she's an avatar without the weight of the other avatars behind her anymore.
Yeah, she has none of that. That
redefines the role.
It's interesting. I mean, my interpretation of the phrase avatar was that you're an avatar of this soul, of this soul that has been reincarnated all these times. That's what's special about the avatar. It's not that they can bend 4 elements. I mean, bending, I think we commented on this last episode, like bending in this world has actually become relatively much less important because this is an industrialized world, and just being able to kick somebody's ass with fireballs is not really that useful. So what, now she can just kick your ass with 4 elements, but she doesn't have this store of ancient spiritual wisdom. And that really, in a certain sense, I guess what I'm saying is she's not the avatar. She's not the avatar of this ancient spirit. She's just somebody who can bend more elements, and that's a fundamental change to what this story is, I think.
Yeah, it's not. That's why the show is not called Avatar, right? This is the Legend of Korra.
True.
Not the Legend of Korra, the Avatar. Yeah, I like that, and I think the knowledge that we learned that the bending of the 4 elements thing was entirely unrelated to what the Avatar state was, because basically Juan got the 4 elements from the 4 turtles, like before he even became the Avatar. That was just like, it's just that part was passed down. And so those 2 things kind of represent something entirely different from each other. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, totally. I feel the Australians being quiet.
Yeah, maybe they're worried about spoiling things.
That was my thought. Yes.
Talking about the big changes that are introduced to the world at the very end of season 2, I'm kind of like, I can't touch on season 3 and 4 stuff.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say anything other than to say that I accidentally watched like the first half of the first episode of the next season because I didn't realize that it had passed on, and I was like, holy shit. That was my reaction. Anyway.
Nice teaser there.
Yeah.
So I'm the odd one out here.
Well, I don't know much.
I finished season 2 and immediately went and continued watching season 3 and the first half of season 4 again.
I did too.
You just can't not,
I had to watch the first 2 episodes just to remind myself what we have to look forward to. I love season 3 so much.
Yeah, it's pretty good. What else should we talk about? Oh, here's something that we haven't touched on yet, which is that you made a joke about it, Elliot. The resolution to this season is a giant kaiju fight. It's such a weird choice. And the thing that I realized I'd completely forgotten about when I was rewatching season 2 is we have this really interesting plot thread of Jinora becoming more spiritual throughout season 2. And then she just kind of turns into... I'm not even really sure. Like, I couldn't even really describe what happens. She turns into a butterfly. I feel like they accidentally... and something happens and she turns Korra back into the Avatar. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I skipped an episode halfway through the season that explained some of those things about Jinora and a couple of other details sometimes.
Yeah.
Because, the Jinora stuff, you're right. It's this thing that's endemic in this season. 2/3 of the dots are there, and then there's just this weird gap that just means that when it finishes, you kind of like, what?
Yeah. I thought it was cool in how it reflected on Tenzin, but like I was just like, wait, what's happening? Why? Like, what? I didn't get any of that, and I did not like the kaiju fight stuff at all. I actually don't like Rava and Vatu as like literal beings and characters in the story. Like, I like them as ideas, but like having to fight this giant Vatu that's like, it would have been so much interesting if she had to fight her uncle, not like the thing that has taken her uncle over.
Yeah, or having again, I hate to say it, but Esker and Desna, like they were there at the end, and they were like in the process of realizing that their uncle was clearly an evil monster, and then it's just kind of like, oh, they see him turn into a giant dark spirit, and then that's kind of the end of their, involvement.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, to me, it just the kind of concept of big good spirit and big bad spirit seems like a bit of a step down for a show or a franchise that has often done a pretty good job of not just having evil, pure evil villains. Especially after season 1 of Korra, which was, like Amon was one of the most captivating and grey villains the series had. And then it was just like, this guy wants to bring on 10,000 years of darkness for some reason. He's cool with that. But the kaiju fight, I mean, I think a lot of shows do that. That's a bit of a problem I have with just like a lot of media. I think there's a bit of an assumption that for finales, bigger equals better in a very literal sense. Like if you make everything larger sized, then the emotional impact will be greater. And I don't think that's often the case. So yeah, if I think of like my top 5 fight scenes in the show, it's almost always just pure like fast-paced bending. It's never these finale fights.
I mean the show is at its best, like Avatar and Korra, when it's doing this really complicated martial arts / bending interaction, and when there's these big lumbering beasts, all that's lost. It's just
what's one of the most fun things about bending is like the cleverness of unexpected things, like the fun stuff in the end of the the Agni Kai between Zuko and Azula, and then Katara steps in, and there's the water, and there's the lightning, and it's all interplaying in a way that's been set up over the course of the show, and it's complex and tricky and clever, and this is just like blast, hit, blast. It's very, very boring.
I also hated the finale of this, obviously, but I don't think that's intrinsically a problem with big monster fights, because the finale of season 2 of Korra is actually just a worse version of the finale of season 1 of The Last Airbender, where they're at the North Pole and there's the 2 spirits, and Yue turns into one of the spirits, and Aang goes into giant spirit kaiju mode, and there's also a guy who's there trying to kill one of the spirits, and it's messing with the spirits where you shouldn't be, and that is just a better version of what is trying to be done here, where Unalaq needs to. He's just pure evil for no reason, and it doesn't really make any sense. There's no humanity behind what is happening in the finale, and that's just kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Unalaq's motivations are very unclear, but I do really like the sound effect of the Vaatu blast.
Of course.
I thought the knocking over of the Aang statue was a pretty wonderful visual too. Like there's something horrifying about that, and it is symptomatic of the changing nature of the world. Like that things are never going to be the same again.
I mean, well, it also like it's knocking down the Statue of Liberty. That's what you have to do in a disaster movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like, I mean, that was definitely a line written on a whiteboard at some point. Was ending equals kaiju, and then bullet points under it, Statue of Liberty ? and then that was in the episode, because that's how this season was written, in my opinion.
But it was good though, so that's fine.
It was
that
good.
One part was good.
It was a good visual. Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. I'll admit that.
To go back to Avatar 1 a bit, I just want to say, like, I think like it's a really beloved section of this season. And I think like part of that, like 1 is very captivating, and I think what I love particularly about those 2 episodes is it kind of seals to me what the idea of the Avatar character is, because obviously the Avatar is different for each one, but you can kind of see, like 1 in particular reminded me of Aang a lot. Sure. There's a certain little, I don't know, cheekiness or something to the Avatar that is just consistent between them, and you see that in this section.
Yeah.
It seems like if you take literally this idea that that it's a reincarnation of the same spirit, the same soul, life to life, then in a certain sense, it's supposed to be the same person. And yeah, so it's this person who deep in their soul, their literal soul, is always going to protect the innocent and be a little bit irreverent while they do it. I mean, I agree with you. The funny thing is I don't really see that in Korra. And I mean, part of me hopes that Korra becomes more like that in later seasons. I don't know. The thing about Korra is I just think she's the most boring character in the whole show.
My thing about Korra is I think she's like a psychopath, and
Yeah.
I don't think the show ever reckons with that. Like she just like it's so weird to me that at the end of every single season so far, it's been like, and Korra learned a valuable lesson, and then she didn't though. she just acts like she just like looks before she leaps constantly. She immediately trusts people or immediately distrusts people at her whim. She doesn't listen to any of the people that care about her, and just like charges forward. And like the show to me, it seems like it never really reckons with any of that behavior at all. It just kind of moves on to the next thing. And it's really weird.
I agree that it's weird. It's almost like the show doesn't think that that's a flaw. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I can once again detect that our friends are being quiet because they know the answer to what we're asking. But the thing is like either the show doesn't think it's a flaw and it's totally awesome that she's this like they don't see it as psychopathic like I think we both do. They see it as like she's headstrong. Mm-hmm. and then it's not a flaw and we're going to keep seeing more of it and it's going to be really unpleasant. Or it is a flaw, but for some reason a flaw that the show is like putting off dealing with.
Sure.
Which I don't know why you would put off dealing with it for 2 seasons at all, or like not even dealing with, but like acknowledging that it is a thing. Like I don't even think. I mean, I'm my memory of these 2 seasons of TV is sketchy and stretched out over a period of time. But like I don't even think somebody like Tenzin has ever been like, you sure beat the shit out of a lot of people, Korra. And you never seem to feel any remorse, even when you find out later that like they weren't actually bad or you were entirely in the wrong for doing that. You just kind of move on. And that's not great. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's not like I need my protagonist to be this perfect angel that never makes any mistakes or anything. I actually think it's very like the character as written is interesting if the show like acknowledges and deals with these parts of her, right? Like I think and as you said, maybe that's one of the main things that is explored in later seasons. I don't know. It just seems like there's just some stuff that's going on there that I continually think the show is going to deal with, and then it doesn't. And I'm like, okay. Like there were multiple times in watching this season where I was like, okay, so we're finally going to deal with Korra's propensity to just beat the shit out of people first and ask questions later. No, oh no, we're not. We're not. Okay. Well, okay. Maybe next time.
Yeah. I wish I could remember what exact thing it was toward the beginning of this season where you and I basically like messaged each other at close to the same time, and we're like, "So Korra's still a psychopath." Now I can't remember what exact event that was, though.
No, I can't quite either.
Yeah.
That's why my favorite characters in Legend of Korra have always been Tenzin and Asami, because they just have their shit together,
Yeah.
That's really nice.
How did you guys feel about Iroh making a reappearance in the show?
I mean, I loved it. It was blatantly fan
it is
service.
very clearly fan service, but it's fine.
It's the most fan service if you think. Yeah, I'm trying not to be too negative about the show. At first I was like, wait, what? And I mean, their explanation made sense, I suppose. But yeah, just like we need someone, and everyone loves Iroh, so let's do it.
He's so wise that he's just like he's become a spirit animal.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like if everything else had been working for me, I might have like shed a tear about it. But as it was, I was just like, oh, yeah, okay, fine.
I think the one that I possibly like even more is in the fog
yes, Zhao.
place when they run into Admiral
Yeah.
Zhao. I think that's the one where I was just like that's a great cameo, because I think without the context of the show of like Avatar, The Last Airbender, it still kind of works. But particularly if you've watched it, you're sort of like, oh, like suck shit, Zhao.
Yeah, that was fun.
yeah.
I enjoyed
Yeah.
that for sure.
Me too. Yeah, and they didn't make too much of it either. It was a very quick little bit, and yeah, it served its purpose. I liked it.
So what else, folks? What else we want to talk about here? There, I feel like I've been harsh on the show, and like, I don't know. I think it's not fair. It's not fair that I loved Avatar so much, and that I can see what these people can do, and I just expected more of them. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. At the risk of repeating myself, I think that we just talked about Redline recently, and it doesn't matter if you know what Redline is or not. Redline is a thing where, I think of it as being like 50 pounds of story in a 1 pound bag, and it makes it really, really delightful. And this is like a couple of grams of low quality story in a 1 pound bag. It's just like you just didn't have enough story to fill up 13 episodes. And that's the fundamental problem. I mean, there's this thing where you and we don't like talking about stuff that we dislike, because like if it's not working, then everything is annoying. Yeah. And it's just, and like this just isn't working. It's just obviously fundamentally flawed. And so we can nitpick all day long. It's unfortunately not going to be able to send our criticisms back in time and fix the show. So ultimately, It's just kind of, yeah.
It's interesting contrasting the way that Elliot and I have kind of reacted to this series with you two, because obviously Elliot and I were watching. Elliot, were you watching The Last Airbender as it came out? I think I was from season 3, and then Legend of Korra onwards I was.
No, I discovered The Last Airbender a couple of years after it finished.
Okay. Did you watch Legend of Korra as it was releasing?
Yes. I think we watched the season when we were living together, actually.
Because it's weird being a part of the Avatar fandom is just an exercise in learning to live with disappointment, because of, obviously, I'm not talking about Legend of Korra here, although season 2 I think is an example of that. But Avatar: The Last Airbender finished, and I remember when I was watching that, it was the best thing I'd ever seen, right? Like, it's just so good. And then 2 years after that, the film is released. And then 2 years after the film, Legend of Korra comes out. And now, for those of you who are up on your Avatar news, there's a new Netflix live action show, and it was quite recently announced that the two showrunners, DiMartino and Kosnietsko, have departed over creative differences, which is just another, signal that this is going to be another disappointing thing to happen to Avatar fans. And so I think I've just been like worn down. And so when there's a disappointing season of Korra, I can just be like, you know what? It's fine. It'll pick itself back up. I'm used to disappointment. I'm okay with it,
I think as well, as I said, I think I blew up how bad this was in my head from watching it week to week and being on like Reddit after each episode, which of course, really helps you capture the positivity. Right. So yeah, and going into this knowing that we're coming up on season 3, which I remember very fondly. Yeah, I also liked the Avatar 1 stuff a lot better this time. I distinctly didn't like it when the show was first airing, so it was. I think that really improved the season, having that middle extra bit actually be very enjoyable this time.
Yeah,
around.
I mean, I think separated out from everything else that's going on around it, I think those 2 episodes are some of, if not my absolute favorite of the season. It's an interesting little short story, and it's got its own little message in there, its own themes. It's exploring its own stuff. It's interesting, and the characters are well defined. I think Juan is an interesting guy. I like it. It's good.
It also has a kind of its own little art style, because like the trees and the clouds and the mountains, like none of it is actually the same art style as the normal show, because in the normal show everything is just drawn basically realistically, but everything in the, you know, the ancient history is like a stylized, is like how you would see a painting of that thing. Like the clouds are just not realistic. The mountains are absurdly like tall and peaked. You know, everything is everything is stylized, and I like that a lot. I thought it worked really well. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, it's a bit more of like a traditional painting sort of style, which suits the fact that it's ancient history. Yeah, I mean, like, because I think the like I don't know how much I want to get into this, but like the reason I didn't like it before was because a friend and I had basically, well, we thought it was a show idea, but now I can look back on it and realize we just written fan fiction on what the first Avatar was. So I just didn't like that they'd done something different that
and
was
hadn't
the same thing.
consulted you.
So, well, I mean, not that part, but just like that they'd done a different idea, and I thought ours was better. So it was good that like now that I've grown up a bit to sort of rewatch this and be like, oh no, this is actually a cool story.
Yeah, I mean, not to do the same thing I do on every single one of these episodes, but it's very Buffy the Vampire Slayer to go back and look at the first Slayer, the first Avatar, and use the creation myth of this extra powered thing to explore the themes of the season. It's a good idea. I like it a lot. I wish it had tied back into everything that was going on in the season a little better. Thematically, it ties in plot wise, it ties in narratively, but I wish it tied a little better thematically. That's my big complaint here. And yeah, I mean, like, I didn't hate this. I think like I don't think it's bad. I just think it's fine. It's just a cartoon, just a perfectly fine cartoon season. That's at worst like harmless. It's just I had expectations, and that's the rough part.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wasn't as bored by this as I was by the first season. I think I'll stand by that.
Man, that's fascinating to me. Can we talk about that?
Sure. I mean, like, I mean, like I thought the two Wan episodes, or however many that was, I thought that was genuinely good. I enjoyed that. I mean, I don't remember the first season that well, but I remember finding it like just grindingly boring, and like to the point of being difficult for me to even make myself pay attention to many of the episodes, where I just don't like or care about any of the characters. And like it's a combination of like overly convoluted and sort of opaque, where you're like, I don't understand what's happening, and I don't care enough to be curious, and just being annoyed. And whereas this, like, yeah, there were rough patches for sure, but like I actually really did genuinely enjoy. I forget everybody. Varric. I enjoyed Varric. I enjoyed Bolin's silliness. You know, it made me smile, actually. I mean, even though like that's obviously like the comic relief section, but like I did enjoy it. So.
Yeah, but season 1 has pro bending. Season 1 has exploring this new city. This fascinating thing about new technology versus old bending. This one of the most fascinating villains in the series. It's got so much cool stuff going on, and like, yeah, it misses the mark in that, like, I don't think it quite explores them as deep as I wish it had, but like it's trying. I felt like season 1 was trying so hard to do something really interesting, and I feel like this season was settling for ho hum.
Yeah, I guess I felt like you said a minute ago, like, or no, I think it was maybe Reuben who said it. Anyway, somebody said a minute ago, like, if you write out the bullet points that make up the season, it reads as a list of cool things that would be fun, but then the execution is lackluster, and that's how I felt about the first season too. Where like you just said, Sky, you just said like really interesting, complex villain with a cool backstory. This idea of pro bending, where you take bending and you turn it into a sport, which has all sorts of implications thematically and in terms of how you can use it storytelling wise. And you know, the city, and it's like, yeah, okay, those are all cool ideas. Which of those was actually executed in a way that left me feeling like they had actually done something interesting? maybe
All of them.
I think that the villain I was utterly satisfied with. I thought his death was tragic, and that affected me, I think, correctly, basically.
Yeah,
But
I mean that scene of them driving away in the boat.
that was great.
That's better than anything in the season.
That is better than anything in the season. I'll acknowledge that, but that's one good moment. Sorry, I just I didn't love the probe ending in the first season. And
sacrilege.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
You know, another.
Now I know how Matt feels when I talk about Star Wars.
I think another good point in favor of season 2 is the love triangle in season 2 goes down a lot smoother than the love triangle did in season 1 for me. Where
There's a love triangle in this season?
Well, I just mean the whole stuff with, Korra and Mako are dating, and then Korra loses her memory, and then Mako and Asami start dating, and then Korra comes back and has forgotten that they've broken up. And Mako's just like, yeah, we're still together, which is an insane thing for somebody to do.
I totally forgot that happened because I didn't care about it at all.
Just that drama worked on me better than the Mako Bolin, Korra Asami love drama from season 1.
Yeah.
So, another reason why season 2 is the best season.
I know. I think wacky Bolin is way more fun than like heartsick Bolin.
Yes.
Something we probably haven't talked about that we should. So there is that one episode where Korra and Jinora go into the spirit world, and that's also just like in isolation, like a fantastic episit.
The design of the spirit world is beautiful.
Like we touched on Iroh being there, but all the stuff with like Korra reverting to a child, and it gets very abstract. All the stuff going on in the world. I thought it was a really fun. I almost wish they could have just done the whole season in the spirit world, like have spirits just be in the spirit world and do wacky shenanigans for 14 episodes.
Hell yeah.
I agree. Yeah, the spirit world stuff and the wand stuff are sort of similar, but not quite the same. And yeah, I love the visuals in that whole section. Yeah.
Can y'all tell me like what the specific reason was that she could never do like the contain the spirit dance correctly earlier in the season, and then learned how to do the dance? Like, I feel like that's just something that there's like it's supposed to be representative of her spiritual journey, and she's not there yet. But I just don't feel like it did well with that at all. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I didn't really notice a change in her ability to do. That technique always just felt to me like it's just like Unalak gave her a 5-minute thing, and then sometimes you do it and you get the timing right, and sometimes you don't. Well,
like multiple times it would almost be done. Like the spirit was all golden and it went all the way up to the top of its head, and then suddenly it's like, nope, just kidding. I was like, okay, I don't get why though.
I just saw that, like, you know how the Pokeball shakes 3 times and then sometimes the Pokemon still comes out?
Yeah, but like thematically, like what is it saying about the character?
You win some, you lose some, Scott. Don't worry about it too much, huh?
I'm going crazy over here.
No, I'd never really thought about it. It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, she... okay, you want me to go thematic with it? Fine. I think that it signifies that she doesn't really have a real connection to her spiritual side at all. So yes, Unalak can teach her the technique. I don't even think he's holding anything back from teaching her. I think she just doesn't understand her spiritual side. And then I think after she has her spirit quest, where she learns the story and she learns that she has this the spirit inside her. I mean, I might just be misremembering, but I feel like after that point, her spirit powers are leveled up because she literally has a connection to her spiritual side, which is literal, and not like when we say spiritual side, we mean like your emotional side.
Yes, like she literally learns about the spirit that lives inside her.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know what I just realized as Matt was saying that, and this is probably a revelation that's like 6 years late, but so because they didn't imprison Vaatu at the end of this season, doesn't that mean he's going to grow again inside the Avatar?
Yeah, technically, right?
That's not going to be for another 10,000 years, Elliot. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, do a mini series about that. That actually sounds fascinating. Like an Avatar who has a dark spirit growing in them. That
But
could
you
be
have
cool.
to set it in 10,000 years, and it's like space age Avatar.
That would be
That's
fucking
what the
awesome.
next season's going to be. Avatar in space, and the Avatar is the only airbenders can travel through space because they can bend oxygen, so they can breathe in space and all that cool stuff.
Well, no, because you need a whole crew. Like you need the water benders for water purification.
The metal benders,
firebenders power
metal
the
benders
ship.
do repairs.
Hey guys, call up DiMartino and
Call up Netflix.
Well, we know they're free now.
They're not doing anything.
They've done genetic engineering at this point, so just everyone is a bender of one kind or another.
Yeah, and they've like invented new kinds of bending of shit that we haven't even heard of.
Okay, all right. Excuse me, I have to make some calls.
Copyright, TM.
Yeah, you know how else we haven't talked about that deserves a quick shout out? President Raiko, is that his name? I really like the moment where he still says no to Korra, even after he finds out that Unalaq is planning to end all of existence. Like, it's a kind of stupid decision, but I kind of respect the writing choice to have him still say no to Korra, which is something that doesn't happen as much in this series as it maybe should, and sort of like defines him as a character, as someone who like has these predefined goals and will stick to them.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, he's almost right when, for some reason, Unalaq goes to Republic City after he becomes evil, which I don't really understand why he would do that. But
yeah, why is he at? Why is that the place? Like, I guess it's the biggest city in the world, so that's where we're gonna start
to knock over the Statue of
just to
Liberty.
do the New York Kaiju fight.
I mean, he's right not to trust Korra, just in general. So
yeah, true. No one should trust Korra.
No one should trust Korra.
Especially after she goes behind his back, like that moment where she tries to get Iroh, Iroh Jr. to basically just like go rogue with the military and join in the civil war, like against orders, and the president basically has to show up and be like, "No,
I
already said this.
What a horrible idea! You're just going to take the fleet and join into a war.
It's a terrible idea.
You're going to." You're court-martialed just for considering this.
Yeah. We haven't talked about Aubrey Plaza and how she's not good in this.
This is just it's interesting. Aubrey Plaza, like, she's always kind of playing the same character, but it almost always works for me, but just not this time, right? And I think it's just that it's so heavily leans into the Aubrey Plaza character. Without any kind of release, that it's just too much.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to blame Aubrey Plaza for this because I've seen her in plenty of roles where she's just incredible. I think this was literally like a director's note. Like they hired her to be herself,
exactly,
and they crafted the character around her. Instead of try to make a character, and they're like, no, you need to be more Aubrey Plaza, be more like that. And yeah, I couldn't deal with it. I just did not like it at all. I hated that character.
I just don't know why you would want a character like that, where it's just like, okay, be flat, be boring, flatter, more boring.
If you're setting it up as the foil to Bolin, I can see it as like, it sets them up as such an odd couple where Bolin is like so happy-go-lucky, and I can't even remember if it's Eska or Desna, whichever one Aubrey Plaza is of those two, is just the complete opposite to that. I can see that kind of working, but it just doesn't really work.
What it feels like to me is that because the one thing that Eska and Desna absolutely achieve is like visually they're phenomenal. Like they're fucking terrifying. Their synchronized waterbending shenanigans are almost always like horrifying to watch in a good way. And like, so that's kind of what it feels like to me is they had the idea for, what if Unalaq has twin or whatever kids, and they're really creepy and they do creepy synchronized waterbending. And then they sort of tried to quickly put some character around that and didn't necessarily try too much. But like, cause like the moments they always shine to me is basically just in fights. Like they always stood out and I always enjoyed them in fight scenes.
Yeah. You just can't finish your season actually trying to get me to buy the fact that Bolin actually is in love with this girl now. And like, it's just, no.
I forgot that.
You can't have that be a joke throughout the season and then at the very end just be like, no, actually, they both do really like each other. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, I also forgot about that. I don't know what I was supposed to feel about that. Like,
Yeah.
was that supposed to be a joke?
I don't know.
Was
I
that
don't
supposed
know.
to make me cry? Was that supposed to? Yeah, I was baffled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like Elliot said earlier, there was a really great opportunity with these two to explore something with their father turning into a homicidal maniac that wants to end the world. And I wish they had done that. That would have been cool. That's how you make the characters interesting.
They take the smallest of steps towards it before not doing anything with it.
Yeah, before the show removes the choice from them, right? Like they were like you put this difficult choice in front of them, and we see earlier in the show, or I think in that same episode, they choose to still support their dad anyway.
Yeah.
And then they get to witness everything, and you represent the choice to them, and then before they get to act on it, something else happens that removes that choice from mattering. And so, okay, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I know we already complained about this basic thing, but like it is almost just a waste to have this like purely cacklingly evil villain when it's so much like I've always and this is I think because I read The Wheel of Time, was super into The Wheel of Time, but like I've always like preferred the idea that like if there's like a dyad, if there's a light side and a dark side, like the dark side should actually have a coherent argument that like if you let us have our chance, then we could do better than you. Light side, all you're doing is you're hogging all of the power for yourself, and you only call us dark so that you can keep us in the shadows, and but like and you could have gone that way, right? Like Unalaq, or at least Unalaq could have believed that was the case, even if he was being deceived. He could have been like, the world could be so much better than it is, and I'm going to usher in a new age, and instead it's like 10,000 years of darkness.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay,
he talks about how Avatar 1 made a mistake by splitting up the things, and Korra realizes that this is true by the end. But his plan isn't reunify the world or like destroy everything and recreate the world again with spirits and humans living together. His plan is just 10,000 years of darkness. Like it's so close to having something, and it just falls through its fingers.
Hell, even Ozai in The Last Airbender was like, I'm going to burn the whole world so that I can build a new one in my image. Like he wanted to genocide the whole planet, but he had a plan for what to do afterwards. I don't get the impression Unalaq had.
And I think it's interesting because the early part of the season like makes you think like there's this when he first shows up at the Southern Water Tribe, like there's this judgment, and it's kind of calling back to one of the big themes of the first season, which is like, oh, everything's modernized. We've lost our way a little bit. We've lost our touch with the natural, with the spiritual side. And Unalaq is almost kind of representing this, that the way he runs his tribe, they're much more in tune with the spirit world. That is a much more important part of their life. Whereas the Southern Water Temple, like where the Southern Water Tribe, we're literally seeing this ancient spiritual ceremony that has basically been commercialized and modernized to remove all the spiritual significance and just be this shallow celebration. And that's a really interesting idea, and I like it a lot. And that could like be an understanding for his motivation, but it turns out to just be like the way in which he co-ops other people or his tribe into doing the things that he wanted to do. It's not what he actually believes at all. Or even if it is what he believes on some level, it is not the primary drive of the choices that he makes, which is boring.
Yeah.
I agree.
Full spirit forests though.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't know. There is still plenty of stuff to like. I enjoy some of the characters, and like I said, I'm very excited to see what happens next. I mean, Elliot, you're constantly saying that the season 3 is your favorite. I think not only did you say your favorite season of the show, but like your favorite like season in the franchise, which is like crazy.
Yes. Although it will be interesting. I haven't, as I said, I haven't watched any Korra like since it aired. So, I'd blown up season 2 to be terrible in my head. I wonder if maybe I'm viewing season 3 through rose tinted glasses or something. It'd be interesting to rewatch it and see, like, is it as good as I remember, or is it just very?
We're gonna come back in a few months, and Matt'll
um,
be still saying that he likes season 2 better than either of the other ones.
Yep.
Yeah. I do just wish like the stuff that they started to touch on with Tenzin and his siblings about Aang not being perfect. I think that was such a cool thing to explore because like Korra is a show that sits in the shadow of Aang and his show. So to explore that actually Aang wasn't perfect, I thought was such a cool idea, and I just don't know why they dropped it halfway through.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like that was I think one of the things I remember texting Scott was like, I think I was like halfway through the season, and I was like, so far the thing that I am by far the most into is Tenzin's subplot. Like I wish we could just have more of Tenzin's subplot, and then if anything, it just very much sidelines that. And I mean, the siblings are still there, but it ceases to really be an important part of the story. You're just kind of like, and then they get their resolution where they're like, yeah, Dad wasn't perfect, and you're like, okay, you said it, but I didn't feel it. Like you didn't earn that moment. Story. You just kind of decided that this is what we're doing, and now we're done with that, I guess.
Well, and especially because to touch on what Scott was talking about, like this, the bad guy of this season is somebody who is trying to get the society to connect more with the spirits. Aang is someone who oversaw the construction of Republic City, which is like the sort of antithesis of connecting with the spirits. So, and he raised Tenzin, who's an airbender, which is meant to be like the most spiritual crew. So, like, I feel like there's so much to talk there about, like, talking about how actually Aang didn't leave the world in a perfect state. Like, he did a lot, and it was better than what it was in his show, but he made mistakes, and they touched on that in season 1, and they began to touch on it here. And like, you don't want to spend too much time dwelling on the last Airbender in Korra, but like, I thought it was such a cool thread to pull out, and they just could have done a bit more.
Well, I was genuinely like taken aback by some of the things they were talking about when they're like basically revealing that like Aang would take Tenzin on like fun trips to places and just leave the rest of the family behind. I'm like, what? Aang wouldn't do that.
He was so shitty to poor Boomy because he didn't have any bending.
And like you feel like Aang would know better than that, you know?
Yeah, like what does Katara think? Because like we see Katara again this season. I wonder what her opinion. Like, I'd love to see that.
Hey,
like,
Katara, was your husband kind of a shitty dad a little bit?
Yeah, like it seems like that was a thing that was missing from the season is Tenzin having a conversation with his mom, like, hey mom, like Dad, I never realized that I was the favorite and this sucked for my siblings. Like what do you think about this, Mom? Nothing. Like we didn't have that scene. That would have been very interesting.
And again, like they sort of touch on it, but they tie this in a bit because like something that Tenzin comes up against in both these seasons is the idea that he's trying too hard to like rebuild the Air Nation and like in season 1 it was like being on the Council of Republic City. Like he dives in too deep into like trying to make the world a better place or whatever and leaves behind some of his other duties. And so exploring the fact that Aang was doing the same thing and like Tenzin has just become his dad is something they sort of touch on, but like they could have gotten so much more out of it. Like it was such a good idea and they could have done so much more with comparing the two of them and this habit that maybe runs in the family of biting off more than you can chew, even if you are the Avatar.
Yeah, that's great suggestions that they didn't go with.
yeah. I mean, it is like, I again, to say it one more time, like the potential for the future here is so fascinating because we've removed the role now of the Avatar. We've removed its job. And what now? Although I think one thing that I think all the shows have done pretty poorly, maybe until this season though, is like I always like they always said like the Avatar is the bridge between the human realm and the spiritual realm, and that's never really been like part of the story very much. Maybe I'm just misremembering the Avatar, but like he was never like helping bridge the two worlds at all.
On occasion, you'd have episodes like the one where you first meet Heibai, the forest spirit, where he's kind of having to do that a bit. But you're right, it's never been like core to the plot of the show.
Yeah.
I think it's because it was never really a spiritual crisis before now.
Sure, that's fair.
In Book 2, Spirits is finally the one where the crisis is involving the spirit world
that's
as
fair.
well.
Yeah. All right, anything else? I think we've been sufficiently mean to this season of television.
I think it will learn its lesson and get its acting gear for season 3.
Yeah, I think it should like get knocked unconscious and then go back and witness the birth of the first season, and it'll learn something new and wake up and remember what it needs to do.
Yep.
All right, guys, that is all we had for you this week. Please let us know what you think of The Legend of Korra Season 2. Do you agree with Matt that it's better than Season 1? Or are you correct? If you have any opinions on this or anything else, feel free to reach out to us at via our email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia. Reuben, Elliot, thank you guys so much for coming on. I always love talking this stuff with you guys. It's always so much more fun to have you two on here since you're much more knowledgeable about these shows than we are.
Oh, it's fun to come and chat.
Yeah, it's always great to come on the show. If you guys enjoyed listening to us discussing stuff, you can check out our show Pale Reflections, also on the Doof Media Network.
Yeah. And of course we will see you here back on the Doofcast many, many more times in the future. 2 weeks ago, actually, you took over the show and talked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a show that apparently existed still that I didn't know about.
A great show that's well worth watching by everybody.
Yeah,
I swear I read that thing was canceled 4 years ago.
Oh, that happened a few times.
It kind of was. It was one of those shows that kept sort of getting one more season because clearly like one executive in ABC really liked it and kept managing to just sneak out one more season.
Yeah, y'all really did seem to like that. I was surprised for a show that I've really never heard of. So,
yeah, I was one of those that watched the first season and bounced off it that you were talking about. So you talked glowingly enough that I want to watch it. I have no idea when I'm going to have time to do that, but
right, me too.
It's always the problem. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks, guys. And if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find Reuben and Elliot's show, Pale Reflections. That's where you can find the Doofcast, and that's where you can find everything that we do on our network. And if you want to support this show, Elliot and Reuben show, any of our shows, you can become a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Or if you want us to prioritize The Legend of Korra Season 3, you can make that happen right now by joining at our Supreme Leader Doof. That's the one, right, Matt? Yes. Our $45 a month donation level allows you to select a book or a season of television for us to do an episode on. So that's where you can jump in and make us talk about Korra Season 3, which, it's got to be better than this one, right?
Absolutely.
I like how Matt doesn't want to commit to that.
I'm really attached to this season, everybody. Anyway, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, we'll be back here next week with another exciting episode where Matt and I will be discussing the movie called The Mist. This is a Stephen King adaptation, and it's one that you've never seen, right, Matt?
Correct.
I am very excited to talk about this with you. So you'll see that next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.